A power outage in Japan takes down half of the country's internet. A new virus is spreading around the world, causing chaos. A massive solar storm threatens to decimate global infrastructure. The stock market completely crashes. Global supply chains begin to break down. A devastating earthquake hits densely populated Japan. Hospitals are overwhelmed. People struggle to find food and water. And those with underlying health conditions face an uncertain future as vital medications become scarce. When the world went offline, it was the start of one of the worst-case scenarios that could have ever been imagined. The situation only continued to worsen over time. In this video, we're going to go over exactly what happened, how it all started, and why experts are warning that something similar could happen again soon. The year is 2023. It's been years since the global event that took down most of our planet's infrastructure and wiped out a significant portion of the world's population. It started off like any other day until the unthinkable happened. An earthquake with a magnitude of 7.3 struck eastern Japan, causing widespread damage and blackouts across the region. At first, it didn't seem like much. Earthquakes are fairly common in Japan. But within hours, people began to realize that this was no ordinary disaster. As the news of the blackout spread, people started to panic. Cell phone networks were quickly overwhelmed by frantic calls. Within minutes, roads were jammed with people trying to flee the cities. Essential services like emergency dispatch and hospitals were completely knocked offline. Grocery stores were emptied and gas stations ran out of fuel. Many people were forced to abandon their cars and head home on foot. But then things started to get strange. As people began to settle in for the long haul, they started noticing that they couldn't connect to the internet or access any online information. It soon became clear that the earthquake had caused a cascade of events that resulted in nearly half of Japan going completely offline. But there was more bad news on the horizon. The Japanese government quickly realized that they had a major problem on their hands. They needed to get essential services up and running again as soon as possible. But with such a large portion of the country's infrastructure destroyed, they were struggling to figure out where to start. At the same time, the rest of the world was starting to feel the effects of the blackout. Global financial markets plunged as investors panicked and tried to sell off their investments. Supply chains began to break down as factories shut down and shipping routes were disrupted. And even more worryingly, a new virus was spreading around the world, causing widespread illness and death. But amidst all of this chaos, there was one glimmer of hope. After several days of working around the clock, the Japanese government was able to restore some of the country's critical infrastructure. Power was restored to most of the affected areas, and emergency services were up and running again. However, the internet and phone lines were still down, making it difficult for people to communicate with each other. Then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, another earthquake struck. This one was even more powerful than the last, measuring 8.2 on the Richter scale. It caused even more damage to the already battered infrastructure and plunged the country into darkness once again. But this time, it wasn't just Japan that was affected. The second earthquake triggered a tsunami which caused widespread damage along the Pacific coast. Entire coastal communities were wiped off the map and thousands of people were killed or injured. With so much of the country's infrastructure destroyed, the Japanese government was struggling to provide even basic services to its citizens. People were running out of food and water and hospitals were becoming overwhelmed. Things seemed bleak as the country teetered on the brink of total collapse. But then a third disaster struck, one that would change everything. A massive solar storm hit the Earth, causing widespread damage to power grids and telecommunications networks. The storm was so powerful that it caused blackouts as far away as Europe and the Americas. It was the perfect storm. A series of natural disasters had weakened the country's infrastructure, leaving it vulnerable to a solar attack. With the country's power grid completely overwhelmed, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Hospitals lost the ability to function, cell phone towers went dead, and ATMs stopped working. People were forced to carry around wheelbarrows of cash and barter for goods and services. The entire country was thrown into chaos. And as if things couldn't get any worse, the media soon picked up on the story and began broadcasting it around the world. The solar storm had caught the world off guard, and governments were scrambling to respond. Many countries began stockpiling food and water in anticipation of the worst. The situation only continued to worsen over the following weeks and months. The virus continued to spread, causing widespread illness and death. Global supply chains completely broke down and economies collapsed. People struggled to find food and water, and those with underlying health conditions faced an uncertain future as vital medications became scarce. It was a true dystopian nightmare, but the question is, how did we get here? The answer is complex and multifaceted, but it can be traced back to a number of key factors. First and foremost, our increasing reliance on technology has left us vulnerable to catastrophic failures. When the power goes out, we're no longer able to function in the same way. We're at the mercy of our devices and infrastructure. Second, the breakdown of global supply chains has made it difficult to obtain essential goods and services. If we can't grow, produce, or transport food, we're not likely to survive. Finally, the emergence of new diseases and viruses poses a constant threat to our well-being. If we can't find a cure for these illnesses, they could easily wipe out a significant portion of the population. The good news is that there are things that we can do to prepare ourselves for a similar situation. By taking steps to improve our self-sufficiency, we can better navigate the challenges that lie ahead. For example, by growing our own food or learning to forage for wild foods, we can ensure that we have something to eat even when grocery stores are empty. Similarly, by learning to preserve food or cook meals from scratch, we can make our food supplies last longer. Additionally, by diversifying our income sources or developing new skills, we can ensure that we have a steady stream of income even when the economy is uncertain. One thing is for sure, we live in a world that is becoming increasingly unstable and unpredictable. But by taking proactive steps to improve our self-sufficiency, we can better position ourselves to weather any storm that comes our way. Now let's take a look at the current state of things and why experts are warning that something similar could happen again soon. Our world today seems to be on a collision course with disaster. We face unprecedented challenges that threaten to overwhelm us if we don't take action. Climate change, resource depletion, extreme weather events, and political instability are just some of the issues that could push us over the edge. Take climate change, for example. The effects of a warming planet are already being felt around the world. More frequent and severe weather events, rising sea levels, and dwindling water resources are just a few of the challenges that we must address if we want to protect our planet and its inhabitants. Resource depletion is another pressing issue. The finite nature of our resources means that we must use them wisely and sustainably. Otherwise, we risk facing shortages that could have devastating consequences. Extreme weather events are also on the rise. From hurricanes to droughts, extreme weather can cause widespread damage and disruption. If we fail to invest in resilient infrastructure and early warning systems, we could be caught off guard when disaster strikes. Political instability is also a growing concern. Conflicts and tensions between nations can lead to economic sanctions, trade wars, and even military action. These hostilities can disrupt supply chains, cause inflation, and create widespread uncertainty. All of these challenges are interconnected and exacerbate one another. For example, climate change can lead to resource depletion and extreme weather events, which can in turn contribute to political instability. It's a vicious cycle that threatens to spiral out of control. The cascading effects of a major disaster can be devastating. Take, for example, the power outage that occurred in Japan. The initial earthquake caused widespread damage, but it was just the beginning. The blackout that followed disrupted essential services and caused panic among the population. As people struggled to cope, the situation worsened and soon spiraled out of control. The second earthquake and subsequent tsunami caused even more damage, plunging the country into total chaos. And when the solar storm hit, things became truly apocalyptic. The power grid was completely overwhelmed, hospitals lost the ability to function, and communication networks went down. The situation continued to worsen over the following weeks and months as the virus spread, causing illness and death. Global supply chains broke down, economies collapsed, and people struggled to find basic necessities like food and water. It was a true dystopian nightmare that left the country in ruins. But the question is, how could something like this happen today? Well, the truth is that we're already seeing signs of a similar scenario unfolding. Our world today is more fragile than we think. Climate change, resource depletion, extreme weather events, and political instability are just a few of the challenges that could push us over the edge. Just think about the recent heat waves, floods, and droughts that have occurred around the world. Or consider the ongoing conflicts and tensions between nations. These are all warning signs that we can't afford to ignore. If we don't take action to address these issues now, we could be facing a disaster in the near future. Experts are warning that the perfect storm is brewing. If a major disaster were to strike today, it could have catastrophic consequences. If a massive earthquake were to hit Japan, for example, it could cause a similar blackout that crippled the country in the past. Or if a solar storm were to hit the Earth, it could cause widespread damage to our power grids and telecommunications networks. The problem is that we're not prepared for such an event. Our infrastructure is aging and in need of repair. Our supply chains are stretched thin, and our economies are more fragile than ever before. And let's not forget the threat of a new pandemic. Viruses don't care about our geopolitical boundaries or economic might. They spread wherever they can and infect whoever they choose. A new virus could emerge and spread like wildfire, causing widespread illness and death. The bottom line is that we're living on borrowed time. The longer we wait to address the issues that threaten our world, the greater the risk of disaster. We need to act now to protect our planet and its inhabitants. We must invest in renewable energy sources, sustainable agriculture, and resilient infrastructure. We also need to find ways to reduce our consumption and waste less. Finally, we must work towards peaceful resolutions to conflicts and build stronger relationships with other nations. The time to act is now. We can't afford to wait until disaster strikes before we take action. The future of our world depends on the choices we make today. So let's hope that we can come together and create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come. Now it's your turn to share your thoughts. What do you think could cause a similar disaster today? How can we prevent it from happening? And what can we do to better prepare ourselves for whatever challenges may come our way? Share your thoughts below. Also, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and stay safe.